Greetings and welcome to this week's tarot reading. Today we will be doing the final variation from the Chalchiuhtlicue's regenerative spread that we started the month of August with. Next month, we will be moving to whatever the reading is for the first Sunday of September from 365 Tarot Spreads by Sasha Graham, which is where these spreads are coming from, the original ones. Today we're going to be looking at connecting with Chalchiuhtlicue's regenerative and healing energy to help gain clarity on building a supportive community. We've been looking at clearing creative blocks. We've been looking at finding ways to use her regenerative energies to bring healing and clearing old energetic blocks and everything from ourselves. Now we're going to use kind of like the third aspect of what water goddesses tend to kind of look at is community. So if you're looking to build a community for yourself, if you're struggling with the community that you're in, if you're kind of a little lost around community, if you have any woundings that need to be healed around community, this is probably a really good one for you. So the question that I'm going to start shuffling into the cards is what needs to be released and renewed so that we can build healthy and supportive communities? That's something that, takes a lot of self-awareness in order to know kind of like what is a community that would be supportive for me? What is a community that would be healthy for me? Especially when we're looking at, the community that we've been conditioned to believe in, and a lot of the stories that we carry, ancestral or just from our general interactions with other people, about community and the role that community plays in our lives. A lot of studies are showing that one of the reasons there's a huge increase in mental health issues, suicide rates, all of drug addictions, substance abuse, all of that kind of stuff, is there's a lack of community with people. We live in our own little boxes. We very rarely socialize, and that does create a sense of isolation that no amount of singular, I guess, activity can fill. There's just something about being around other people that helps us feel better. All right, so what needs to be released and renewed so that we can build a healthy and supportive community? Okay, we'll make cards. Again, I decided to keep all 7 cards that they had in the original spread. 2, 3, 6, 7. And basically, I altered and changed some of the questions in order to suit what it is that we're looking to get information on today. The first card has the question for what past experiences of community need to be cleansed. And so this is going to help us kind of look at experiences that we've had in community that might have soured us or isolated us or pushed us out of wanting to be part of a community. So here we have the Four of Wands. Now, this is interesting because the Four of Wands is a card about being grateful for the blessings that we have, for celebrating it. And maybe when we're looking at, how do we understand how a card of celebration, of joy, of partying kind of thing would have negative impacts on our idea of community. And to me, what's coming up right now is this idea that of sitting on the sideline, right? Like that wallflower. So you go to a dance and you're the one that's always sitting on the outside and watching all the people dance and have fun. Or if you were isolated in school, for instance, it would really kind of make you less likely to want to take part in this kind of community idea. It's also possible that there's a part of us that longs for being accepted, that longs to be part of it, and either self-esteem, self-love, self-value, all whatever it is that we're kind of carrying around is having us feel as if we don't deserve it, we don't belong, we're never going to be celebrated in community. And it's also maybe possible that, throughout all of our experiences, that we never really realized what kind of community we wanted to be part of. And when you're looking at celebrations, it could also be looking at like kind of traditions and different uh, customs and stuff like that. So if you didn't feel like you fit into, say, your religious community growing up, then it might be trying to find like what celebrations feel good, what celebrations do I want to take part of, what traditions, what heritage, what um kind of ideals do I want in a community that I can celebrate. And so maybe there's a disconnect between the ideal community that you want to be part of, that you want to celebrate, and the experiences that you've had. And so kind of trying to find a way to bridge that gap in order to say, well, I am valuable enough to have the community that will support me. I am lovable enough to have people that will want me, and looking at that kind of thing, because maybe that's how we were made to feel as we were growing up, or even in the day to day of our regular living, trying to find how to fit into community and how to celebrate being part of a community. And part of the problem with that is, how do I fit into a community means I have to change something about myself. And so maybe what we need to release and look at is, where is the community that will celebrate me? The next card we have is, how can I let go of those experiences and move beyond them? So we're looking to see, how can I move beyond having to fit into a community to how is it that I can be celebrated in a community? And the card we have is the Nine of Swords. And the Nine of Swords is, learning to let go by understanding that there is something that we can do. So the Nine of Swords is all about the stress and the anxiety that we carry day to day. It's the I want to say like the boo wigglies, or the things that wake us up in the middle of the night, or that keep us from being able to sleep. And we have to let those go. We have to let go of the thoughts that we will never be accepted for who we are, that we're not good enough to be in a society. And the nice thing about the Nine of Swords is, the Nine of Swords is connected to the element of air, which is all about thought. And it does involve a level of conflict and confrontation. And so with the Nine of Swords, what we're looking at is, we're looking at the thoughts that we have to release. So whatever experiences that we've had that have kind of tainted or skewed or created biases and judgments against different groups of people, different societies, how they need to be played out, we need to start letting that go and just allowing ourselves to come forward, and allowing our vision of a community to be brought to us. And when we can sit here and say, what would make me feel good in a community, that's what you want to kind of tune into, instead of constantly going, well, what's the point of going and being part of a community? Because every time I try to reach out, and every time I try to fit in, and every time I try to do something to be part of a community, something goes wrong. And that's that energy of the Nine of Swords, is that no matter what I do, everything will go wrong. No matter how I try to fit in, I'm never accepted. And these are just stories that we have in our head, because what we're trying to do is, we're trying to fit into a mold, we're trying to fit into a role, and we're trying to, in some cases, we're trying to create that ideal community without really asking ourselves, what do I want? What do I believe community is? And how can I start to, incorporate that into my lives? And this is all about the stories that we're telling in our head that are keeping us from really wanting to go forward. And a lot of people nowadays are actually dealing with social anxiety, and higher levels of social anxiety and agoraphobia. And so it gets really, really difficult to be able to, break out of that and go in and meet other people, when you see the chaos in the streets, and you see all of the things that would definitely increase anxiety levels. And it's important to kind of find people that understand where you're at and understand what you're going through, because that's the community that will support you. That's the community that will understand and see you and accept you. The next one we have is, what is it about the old stories of community that we're trying so desperately to hold on to? And this one is interesting because a lot of times we're holding on to these old ideas, be it positive or negative, right? So if we're holding on to this old idea that community is not for me because no matter what I do, I will never fit in, that's always going to, anytime you come into a situation where you're going to be engaging with community, you're going to have that as part of the story that you're bringing in. And so we have the Fool. And this one's interesting. So when we're looking at what is it that we're desperately trying to hold on to, and then we have the Fool here, it's this idea that I don't fit in. I always have to go someplace else and try again. You know, the Fool is in a constant state of starting adventures and is in the constant state of wanting to move forward and looking for new things to do. And so having the Fool here coming with what we're holding on to, there's this sense of, I will never find what it is that I want. So I'm constantly searching. I'm constantly seeking. There's nothing that I can find that fits for me. And the more we stick into these stories that I don't fit in, or the communities that I'm looking for don't exist, right? When we think about the Fool, he goes off on an adventure and tries to find the answers to whatever it is. So if you're going off and you're looking for community and you can't find what you're looking for, then that's a story that we're holding on to. And it's keeping us from moving into a more empowering position, right? Because, okay, so if the community that I'm looking for doesn't exist out there, then who's to say that we can't create here, right? Who says we have to join a pre-existing community? We can put the invitation out and say, I'm number one in the community. Who wants to join a community with me and add to my numbers, kind of thing. And so a lot of, really established communities, that's how they started. They started with one person or a small group of people of like-minded ideas that brought other people together. So the next card we have is, how can we help to regenerate the ideal vision of community? And when I say ideal, what I'm looking at more is, it's an ideal community for me, right? It's the community that would help me to really feel who I am with other people. And maybe ideal isn't quite the right word, because ideals are things that are very lofty, right? They can be very difficult to achieve. So it's like that kind of like average, perfect community kind of thing, because you also want to understand there's no perfect community out there. There's going to be a community, there's always going to be things within the community that someone is unhappy with, because we're all different. We all have different needs. We all have different experiences. So we're looking to see how we can regenerate the idea of community, I guess, is maybe a better way of putting it, right? Because if we're soured on community and we feel that we're always looking and we're never finding, and we're getting more and more anxious as time goes by, we want to look at how can we regenerate the idea of community? How can we heal the idea of community? And here we have the wonderful Knight of Cups. And the Knight of Cups is a very creative driven person. And this is someone that can go out and create what it is that they want in the world based on what it is that they're feeling. And so this is really important when we're looking at community. If you want to build a community that is supportive, then that's the energy that you have to go looking for when you're going out for these communities. If you're sour and you're feeling, frustrated, or if you're bitter about your experiences in community, then that's what you're going to find in any community that you either create or you join. The Knight of Cups is also, interestingly enough, the middle of our spread. And so he's kind of like the balancing of this, where everything leading up to it is what's going to contribute to the emotion that we're having when we're going to renew the ideas that we have of community. So if we can, understand that, yes, in the past, maybe we weren't celebrated, maybe we weren't accepted, and that caused us to be anxious and nervous and hesitant to join communities, and feeling that we will never ever belong or exist, and then constantly feeling we're being shoved out and having to go find a new place to be and a new group of people to be with. That's going to influence the emotional energy that we have, and we're going to be like, well, might as well just go and just join whatever and end up in kind of like a gossipy, hurtful community. Or you can look at all of those things again from a different perspective. And this time you can look at it and say, well, I can celebrate myself and I can find communities that are like me that will help me to feel that I belong. And in doing so, I can start to move away from those old stories and the anxiety, and I can take small steps and I can look at things from now, and as opposed to constantly comparing them to what used to be. And I can be the one that's going to start the true adventure of looking for the community that I want to build or that I want to be part of. And that will influence the Knight of Cups into being a very creative, a very curious, a very adventurous kind of process of finding the community and building the community that is going to be supportive and caring for you. And because he's the kind of the middle guy, and we're looking at community, and he's a cup card, this is all showing that he has the ability to guide us as we create a community that is really going to inspire us into action. The next one we have is, what actions can be taken to ensure that we are creating community from a healed space? So this kind of comes to what I was talking about with, looking at everything that we've had in the past and kind of coming from that Knight of Cups energy of saying, well, what type of energy are you carrying? What emotion are you going to be bringing into your new community? And so here we have the Queen of Swords. And the Queen of Swords is very much about, cutting through to the heart of things. So you have the Knight of Cups, who's all about emotion-driven action. And then the Queen comes in and says, okay, now that you're aligned emotionally with what it is that you want to do, now's the time to really cut away all that old stuff that came before this. And I kind of look at it in the sense of, when we have relationships that we've been in for very, very, very long time, you're looking at like sibling relationships, parent-child relationships, family relationships, even friends that you've had for years and years and years. We tend to get this idea that nothing changes, right? So we'll look at them and we'll constantly kind of be seeing them as they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever it was that we kind of really got that idea of who they were. And because of that, we get stuck in these roles, we get stuck in these patterns. And you can really see it in, say, like sibling relationships and parent-child relationships, where the parent will always see the child as a child, and the child will always see the parent as some kind of authority figure. And even when the child grows up, or the siblings will always kind of like see each other as rivals for attention. And when they grow up, they still will see each other that way. It's really, really difficult to be able to, as the Queen of Swords would come in, cut out all of that old stuff, all the old stories, all the, emotionally contained stories and triggers, and say, hey, you know what? You need to cut this out because it has absolutely nothing to do with now. And so when we're looking at building healthy and strong communities, the Queen of Swords is coming in and saying, look, you're in alignment with a really good vibration. And now you're moving forward, you're taking action to find or build your own community. And now you need to make sure that as you're going forward, that your interactions are based on who you are now, what you're experiencing now, and you're not bringing that past in, right? So you're going forward and you have a little bit of a hiccup and you're going, here we go again. This is the same thing, right? So if you're speaking and using a lot of past tense and a lot of previous experiences in your dialogue of the moment, you're speaking from hurt, you're speaking from wounding, you're speaking from all of those things that are limiting. And what we need to be doing is we need to be, acknowledging those stories when they come up and saying, yes, that did happen. However, this person did not do that to me. This group did not do that to me. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to trust them. And I'm going to basically make my decisions on what I see, what I hear, and what I experience. And so the Queen of Swords, although she is a queenly kind of like feminine energy, she's also one that says, I have the ability to separate my emotions from what I'm experiencing. And so it doesn't mean, in some cases you could see her as a very cold person, but that's not what the Queen of Swords is. She is emotional, but at the same time, she doesn't allow the emotions to cloud what is going on in the moment. And so when you're going with the Queen of Swords, it's important to make sure that you're not getting pulled into any of the conflicts that have nothing to do with what's going on and everything to do with what's in the past, so that as you're going through and you're finding your community, you can have the emotional actions of the Knight of Cups, but you're really kind of going from a now moment. And that now moment is constantly changing. So even a week from now, it's going to be that you in a week from now, as opposed to you today. What will connect us to a regenerative community? And so following the Queen of Swords and cutting out all of the crap and being able to move forward from an empowered position. Now we want to be able to know, okay, so now that I have cleared a lot of this old stuff out and I've opened up the pathways and I'm a bit clearer and I'm a bit more understanding about what it is that I want to feel in a community and how I want to act and communicate within a community. Now we're looking at, okay, so once I start to build this community, how can I regenerate and keep it to be a healthy community and avoid any pitfalls that can slip into communities that end up poisoning them. And interestingly enough, now we have a second knight. So now again, it's a call to action. And what the Knight of Coins is saying is that, the best way to regenerate a community is to build one from the ground up. And, sometimes when we look at the way communities run, it's kind of like all or nothing, right? And so I look at the Knight of Coins, and I think of when I had classrooms and how I would always like run my classrooms. And I would look at different classrooms and I would go into them and you would see on the wall, all the rules. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And I was like, well, what is the point of having a whole bunch of don't do rules? Because nothing was saying what to do, right? It's always about don't do this, right? And the kids, of course, are very creative, right? So if you say, don't talk in class, then they start singing. And they said, well, you didn't say I couldn't sing in class. And so what you want to do is create the idea of what it is that you want in the community by, one, embodying who you want to be in your community. And by two, not creating rules against what not to do, but creating suggestions or creating ideas of what it is that community would feel like. And so in my classroom, it would it was different because I never had like don't do this rules. I would have like be respectful and listen when someone's talking. But at the same time, a lot of people don't know what that looks like. So I would have these behavioral expectations, and then I would match it with how I behaved myself. And so we live in a world that's so disconnected from community that we actually need to be able to model and create frameworks for what our community is going to look like and how we expect people to interact within the community without controlling their behavior. Because one of the things that I said earlier is that everybody's different and everybody's going to have their own triggers and everybody's going to have their own issues. And so to be mindful of that without sacrificing our ethics and our integrity, that's what's important. And so one of the other things about the Knight of Coins is that he's like, no, this is also a real-time based action that you're going to be taking. So if you want to build a healthy community, you have to be willing to meet with people. You have to be willing to either have someone that is good at event planning, or you have to put yourself out. And so when you think about it, if you have a relationship, we'll go back to like the parent-child or the sibling relationship. If you have a disconnected relationship in that, and you sit there and go, well, my sister never wants to do anything with me, or my parents are always ignoring me, you also have to sit back and go, but what are you doing? Because maybe your parents and your sister are having the same thoughts about you, right? So if you're going, well, they never text me or they never call me, when was the last time you called? And that's what the Knight of Coins is saying. You need to be accountable for the actions that you're taking as well as the inactions. So if you want to regenerate a community, you have to put the action in there. And by taking physical action, you're actually going to imbue that community with a greater sense of grounding, with a greater sense of foundation and the energy in order to be able to do things amongst each other. And the last card is, how can we honor the process of creating safe and healthy containers for community? And that's really important to be able to understand, is that, when we create containers, there's boundaries in there. And a lot of us, myself, I would say, speak for myself, is that I have really a love-hate relationship with boundaries. I can create boundaries, I can't keep them. And especially if it's boundaries with myself, I will be the first to cross over all of my boundaries. And so when I'm in community, it becomes very, very easy for me to fall into that people pleasing, to fall into that perfectionist, to fall into the self-sacrificing person, because there is a part of me that is so much about, community, about wanting to be there, about wanting to help, and then always forgetting myself. And so I think it's really important that as we're creating these containers for these communities, that the first container that we have to build is our container to be in a container of community. And so we have the Five of Swords here. And the Five of Swords has a couple of different aspects of it. One is that when we're looking at building a community, the Five of Swords kind of is that midpoint of, do I keep going? Do I keep fighting for what I want? Or is it pointless and I give up? And if we do the pointless and I give up, then we're going back to like this Nine of Swords. And it's really interesting that, I mean, we've got the Queen of Swords, but we've got three swords in this. And so what we really need to be looking at when we're trying to build healthy and sustainable communities is the stories we're telling and the battles that we're fighting. And a lot of the battles that we tend to fight are past battles still. We're still kind of holding new people accountable to what old people have done. And I know, like, a lot of times, like, you'll watch in movies and stuff like that where, it's a rom-com kind of thing, and they'll be like, oh, this happened to me, and the love interest goes, but that's not me, right? Like, you can't hold me accountable to what somebody else did. And that's kind of where the Five of Swords is coming in, is the Five of Swords is coming in to say, hey, look, you fought a lot of battles. And what you have to do at this point is you have to ask yourself if the battle is worth it, right? Like, is the battle of all of these things in the past, right? That's what the Five of Swords is asking you right now in regards to, creating a healthy container. Are all of these old battles that you fought, are they worth it? Like, have you actually lost more than you think that you did? Like, were there communities that would have accepted you, that would have loved you, that would have, helped you to become, the person you're meant to be? But because of old stories, that's what you saw. You didn't see the support, you didn't see the caring, you didn't see the nurturing that could have been there in that community. So you fought. And so we're looking at, is it worth it to keep fighting these battles? Are your resources, are your connections, like, have you lost enough at this point? Or are you willing to just keep losing more? The other thing about the Five of Swords is that they also look at, where are you in regards to this situation? So if you're carrying a lot of bitterness, if you're carrying a lot of anger, if you're carrying a lot of frustration around with you, and you're taking that into any community that you're joining, what is that doing, right? Like, are you part of the conflict as to why the communities keep falling apart around you? And it's not necessarily that the communities themselves, but you end up feeling like it's falling apart and you have to leave. And these are people that tend to kind of go into communities and will look for trouble, and then will kind of like gossip around and speak to everybody around the problem, except for the person that actually, if they spoke to them, they would get answers and clarity. And the Five of Swords is also a little bit about, of like, where are you kind of bullshitting yourself, and where are you kind of building yourself up as either the victim or as like the aggressor in all of these situations in these communities, because the thing is part of community means that we have to accept others as they are, right? And when you create a community, you have to understand that every community will have conflict. Every community will have some kind of strife in it, because everyone is hurt, everyone is wounded, and everyone's looking for that ideal community. And when the ideal community fails to manifest, then they blame other people for it. And so the important thing is, if you can let go of all of that, following the Queen of Swords, and say, hey, look, at this battle, it's not worth it anymore. And I'm ready to walk away from this so that I can, clear the air. I can get really clean and clear within myself about what it is that I need to be able to do in order to be a better person as I move into a new community. And so a very interesting reading as far as community building goes, because we have one major arcana card, which is the Fool. And so to me, like, as we're kind of summarizing, the Fool kind of comes up and says, you know what? You want to build a community, you want to regenerate, and you want to heal, and you want to build a healthy, supportive community. You need to take it on as an adventure. You need to be willing to step away from everything that's come before you. And you can take the lessons that you've learned, but leave all the crap behind and go on an adventure to find the community that you want to be part of. Find the community that you want to embrace, even if you have to build it yourself, right? Like when you look at adventure stories, the hero goes off alone and ends up collecting people along the way. And that's kind of like what you're looking to do, is to go off. And we've got like the two knights here going, you have to emotionally be connected to the community, and you have to be physically committed to the community. And so as you're going off on your adventure, you're actually physically going to go on an adventure, and you're going to go and find people, and you're going to engage and interact with people, but you're going to do it from your heart. You're going to do it from a place of love and acceptance and openness, as opposed to, anger and bitterness. You have to let go of the stories that you have to keep fighting for your place, and that no matter what you do, people are bad, right? So it's hard to have a community where you feel you're constantly having to fight for your place, and you're feeling that people are bad and that something bad is always going to happen, right? Like, this is doomsday. This is, the catastrophizing that anxiety tends to have us doing. And then we also have the Queen of Swords, who's going to come in and say, look, I will help you distinguish between emotion reactive choices you're making and fact-based in the moment choices that you're making. And this is going to be really key to kind of lean on. And again, we're going to go back to where we started with, do you want to be sitting on the side watching other people celebrate community, or do you want to be part of that celebration of the community? So I hope you enjoyed this week's reading, and next week we will move on to a new spread. So I hope you come and join me. And in the meantime, like the video, subscribe, and I will see you in the future. Take care.